raised him, he trained him. One day he talked to him from a burning bush and he said, Moses, you're going to go to Pharaoh and you're going to tell him to let my people go. And so Pharaoh is going to get 10 chances. 10 chances. And so Moses went to Pharaoh and he told him, Pharaoh, Israel is God's firstborn son. And God said he's going to give you 9 chances. 9 chances. But on the 10th time, if you don't listen, God said, if you don't let my firstborn son go, I'm going to take your firstborn son. Well, remember we learned yesterday how Pharaoh hardened his heart. He got 10 chances. Or he got 9 first. It was the water that turned to blood. And he still hardened his heart. And then it was the frogs. The frogs were everywhere. And Moses prayed for the frogs to go away, but then Pharaoh changed his mind. And he said, I will not let the people go. And then there was flies. And there was locusts. There was hailstones that came down. Everything went dark. But remember, God's people were always safe. When the stuff would happen in Egypt, God had set his people aside, and he had protected them. Well, Pharaoh kept hardening his heart, and he said, I will not let people go. And so Moses told him, okay, God gave you 9 chances to let his firstborn son Israel go. But you've hardened your heart. So tonight, the Lord is going to take your firstborn son. And guess what happened? God told Moses, Moses, my people are going to be safe, but the angel of the Lord is going to fly over Egypt, and he's going to kill all of the firstborn sons of Egypt. But he goes, I need you to tell my people to do something very special. Now remember in chapel, we've been learning all about how Jesus is the Lamb of God. When Adam and Eve sinned, remember God had to make them clothes. He had to sacrifice a little lamb so that he could cover their nakedness, but also cover their sin. And then, remember we learned about Abraham, how Abraham had to sacrifice his son Isaac, but then God said, no, Abraham, don't do it. I will provide myself as the lamb. And so, we've been learning about how a lamb is a representation. It's a picture of Jesus being the Lamb of God. And so, Moses was told, Moses, I need you to sacrifice a lamb. That means you need to kill it. And you need to take the blood of the lamb, he said, and do something at everybody's doorpost. He said, when you sacrifice a lamb, I want you to put the base of the blood on the floor, and I want you to put on the doorpost, on the top and on the sides, I want you to put the blood of the lamb. Now this lamb had to be very special. It had to be 1 year old, and it had to have no blemishes. It had to be a perfect lamb. And it had to be a male lamb, and it had to be about 1 year old. And he said, I want you to put the blood of the lamb on the door. And he said, when the angel of the Lord, because Jesus himself was going to be over that night. And at midnight, the angel of the Lord is going to pass over, and all of the firstborn sons of Israel were going to die. But that's what God said. I want my people to put the blood of the lamb on the door, and I want them to hide in their houses that night. And when the angel of the Lord comes over, everybody who's behind their house, behind that door, will be safe. And so, God's people obeyed. They got the lamb, they sacrificed it, they put the lamb on the door, the lamb's blood, and they hid in their homes that night. Well, that night, the angel of the Lord went over all of Egypt. And all of the firstborn sons died in Egypt. And even Pharaoh's son died. So Pharaoh wakes up at midnight because there's crying all over Egypt. Everybody is finding out their sons have died. They're all crying. And so the Pharaoh goes and he checks on his son, and his son has died. And so he's devastated because he goes, oh, the God of Israel was right. And so he called Moses. He said, Moses, come back. He said, I want you to leave. Get your people and go. But then Pharaoh said something very interesting. He said, but before you go, I want you to bless me. I want you to bless me, because Pharaoh finally realized that the God of Israel was the one true God. And so he said, bless me before you go. And so Moses and all the people, they got all of their stuff together. And God said, I'm going to give you favor in the eyes of the Egyptians. He said, for the 430 years that you've been slaves there, he said, I want you to ask the Egyptians to give you something for your trip. So the people went to the Egyptians and said, do you have anything that we could take with us on our trip? And all of the Egyptians gave them silver and gold and jewelry. So the Israelites were able to leave with all of these jewels and gold and silver for their journey. Because God was repaying them for all of the work in the slavery that they'd had for 430 years. And then God did something really amazing. When they put the blood on the lamb, God had said, I want you to eat a very special meal that night. Eat a very special meal. And then he said, and then I'm going to do something. And do you know that 3 million of the Israelites, when they eat that special meal, they put the blood of the door, that they all were healthy. Anybody who had sicknesses, the sicknesses were gone. The old people had energy like a young person because God restored their health so that they would be ready for the journey. So that was the amazing thing that God did. The power of the blood, not only did they protect them from death, but it also healed them for the journey. And so God said, this day is going to be called Passover because that's when death passed over your house. He said, and this is your new year, the new year. So in Israel, they changed their calendar, and this became their new year because it was a new day. They were becoming a new group of people that were going to go in. And guess what? When we invite Jesus into our heart, we get a new day too. We get a new birthday because this is when I'm born again. Now I want to show you something because the lamb on the door became this. It's a picture of this. What is this a picture of?
Cross.
The cross. The cross. That's what the lamb on the door represented. It was a picture of the cross. Because when we have Jesus in our heart, we're covered by the blood of the lamb. And then what we are is we're protected not only from the yucky in our heart gets washed away by the blood of the lamb, but we're also protected from death because we get to live forever with Jesus. And so the lamb on the blood was a picture of Jesus one day coming to die on the cross. And so that's why Passover is so important, because it's a picture of death passing over us.